everybody. Hope you can hear me okay. Got my volume turned up the whole way. It's an honor and a privilege to have this opportunity again to talk with all of you. And before I start, you may notice we're in a unique position today. I am in uniform. I am at work. We currently have a protest going on here in our city in Tustin. People are gathering. So I have a sign on my door and that I am not to be disturbed unless it's an emergency, and which I do not anticipate. This has been a planned protest, a peaceful protest. They'll have their opportunity to have speakers and voice their concerns and let their voices be heard, and then they will begin the march, which will then come out here in front of the station. So, so I am in uniform, so you have a unique opportunity to be here with me today and see law enforcement in action. So welcome. Looking forward to having a chance to talk with all of you again. So thank you, appreciate that. Thank you. So kind of what the conversation has been is where I came from in terms of law enforcement, my beginnings, and then going into where we are today. Some of the current issues facing law enforcement, coming out of the pandemic, how we're going to move forward from here, particularly for law enforcement profession. And again, I am grateful and honored to have this opportunity to talk with you. So I did attend SDUIS. I graduated back in 2007 with my doctorate in clinical psychology. And so before I got to that point, I graduated from high school back in '79. So if anybody is around that time, you'll know. I was thinking when we took, in those days, in the late '70s in high school, when girls took tests in terms of careers, where we were going to go, what we wanted to do, I don't know if they were skewed, they probably were, because the two job opportunities I was given was a teacher or an actress. So I thought, well, that's not really what my interest is in. Okay, I guess I'm being, pigeonholed into these positions, but I always had it kind of wiggling around in my head about being a police officer. Thought it was interesting. I had an interest. I looked it up in the library, but one of the things I never did was talk to anybody about it. Maybe for that reason of, that's not what girls do. I wasn't accepted in my family, around my friends, my boyfriend at the time, even when I considered military service. I was told, no, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. Don't even get started talking in that direction. So I stayed quiet. I didn't let my thoughts or feelings be known. But I did find another love, and that was the field of psychology. So, which I still love today, absolutely. And I look forward to serving again in that capacity when I retire finally from law enforcement. So, love psychology, went to school, did my undergrad, graduate school, became a licensed marriage family therapist, which I am today. I keep my license active, even though I have not practiced as a LMFT. I do maintain my license active, so I do enjoy taking a continuing education unit, so it keeps my hand in the field that way. So I do love it, and I also have the opportunity for peer support in my field here in law enforcement. So I became a licensed marriage family therapist, was trying to work in the field, trying to get clients. I remember I had a big block of about 3 hours where, clients don't come in, get paid. So I was looking to my future, and it started to come up to me again that I wanted to do something more. I wanted to help the community. I wanted to work with the community. I enjoyed more. I had both, once I licensed, I was both a private practice and continued in a free clinic. And I enjoyed the challenges so much more working in a community that really needed help. I used to make the joke in private practice of dealing with a lot of you know, white people with insurance, basically. But and that's okay too. There are obviously some very important issues in any community, but that's where I was going, and I thought I wanted to do more. So I had some customers. I was bartending at the same time, and that were LAPD officers. They kept trying to convince me, yes, you can do this job, you can do this job. I said, you know, I don't know. And I think those old messages kept playing in my head that, no, I can't do it. This isn't, you know, it's not what girls do. You know, I can't do this. And they said, no, trust me, we'll teach you how to be a cop. What you're bringing is your work ethic, your desire to help people, you're wanting to make a difference. We'll teach you everything else. You're bringing a heart for service. You're bringing a heart for people and community and working with people. Trust us, you can do this, you can do this. So I started working a little bit with the police department where I was with a free clinic, and developed a program that I called Violence Intervention and Counseling Targeting At-Risk Youth, Victory. Was the acronym for that. And a lot of police departments have youth programs. With LAPD, there was Jeopardy. Here at Tustin, we have the Explorers, and just basically working with kids in the community, giving them the structure and guidance and opportunities for fun times too, that a lot of kids don't get. And in fact, I remember one time working with the Jeopardy kids. We took them up to our academy one day, and a lot of these kids in the South LA area where I was working at the time had never been in a pool before, never had the opportunity to go swimming. So it was a great opportunity to really interact with the kids, and so I love doing that. So working at trying to combine the two, we have a lot of programs for kids, but we're missing the counseling part. And I brought this up with folks too. I always wondered what theoretical orientation or treatment modality is there for when kids are telling me when the gunshots start, when the bullets start flying, we just jump on the deck. You know, we just, you know, we sleep in the bathtub at night. We don't keep lights on. We, you know, we just hit the floor and wait for it to stop. I don't know how to work with that, you know, as a therapist. So I enjoyed being the law enforcement officer because it gave me an opportunity to protect. Seeing domestic violence cases at the onset, and because I saw a lot of clients, I would see them that were on probation for domestic violence and family disputes, but not on the law enforcement side, coming up on cases, and you see some horrific things. One that's actually I'm thinking about coming up on and that got a call about domestic violence in progress, and got there, and sure enough, the husband had his wife by the hair and was punching her in the face. Well, he turned and looked at us when he saw us and said, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's just my wife." Got it, and continued punching her. And we got in there, had to hop the fence, got in there, took him to custody and had him stop. And what's interesting is the community members that had been around there were yelling at him to stop, but then were yelling at us because we did not then beat him. So, you know, it's where you are at the time, but no, he didn't resist. So we took him to custody. But at the same time, what this woman is now watching is her love, you know, her emotional and financial partner being taken away. And I've had it more often than not where a lot of partners then turn on us and say, "Why are you taking him? Don't do that, don't take him." So it's a different experience, you know, when you see people weeks later, and often they've worked this out. He's out of jail and so forth. Then family disputes, same thing. Had an opportunity to work with families right there in the field when the dispute was happening. In fact, just a funny story on that, because they knew my background, anytime we had an attempt suicide or family dispute, oftentimes my training officers would just say, "Hey, go ahead and handle it, do whatever you want with it. I'll sit here and I'll just watch you." And so they wanted to learn. So even though I was the one in training, they wanted to learn how to handle family disputes and domestic violence cases differently than what we were always doing. So after they watched me a few times working in kind of a counseling situation, right then and there, they would say, "Okay, let me do the next one and let me learn." So I always enjoyed that. And the thing with officers, they want to talk to somebody about issues and things that are going on with them, but there's a real difficulty in trusting oftentimes. So I have that too. I'd be sitting as a partner in the car and I would start hearing some of the family dramas, but that's okay, whatever we need to do to help. So then I started getting interested in actually, I think I started my doctorate prior to getting an academy. I had to take a small sabbatical. So it took about 14 years by the time I got it done. For those that are in that position, it does happen. 14 years are going to happen anyway. So why not do your education and finish? And did get my dissertation from SDUIS in 2007. What I did is combined my two love careers, and that is marriage and family therapy and police officers, and wrote the dissertation on satisfaction stressors in law enforcement relationships, marriages. So using the marital satisfaction inventory revised, and use that as my hypotheses as well. And didn't always get it statistically significant because there was still the hesitancy, I think, to divulge because like I said, that lack of trust and oftentimes, but some of the things when it came to women in particular in the financial question, this is a profession where you are paid the same regardless. It's just about your rank and your position. Doesn't matter what your gender is, there is equal pay. I make the same as someone else in my same position, depending, same thing, with LAPD, as a police officer, as a sergeant, was paid the same. So kind of what I'm thinking now, being a woman on this job as well, obviously things that are going on out there right now, the protests and the other civil unrest and other issues that are going on. My time, when I made sergeant in 2000, May of 2000, I was, and the only way I can articulate that is a female sergeant. But then the Democratic National Convention happened in August of 2000. And I was deployed every day out there in the field, in every skirmish line, you do the same thing. It doesn't matter, we're shoulder to shoulder, race or gender, we're all in blue. And those that are in the field and know that, so we're all together and working together. And that's what I say when I made sergeant. And the reason I say that is because I was asked to take a squad out at one point, and something going on downtown. I don't remember what it was, but I was told take a squad and respond out. My squad at that time was myself and 4 guys. So we went there. They stayed at the car. I approached one of the men there at the scene, and I told him, said, "Hey, I've got a squad here. We got sent out. Wherever you need us, just let me know." And I got one of these where he sort of looks at me and turns and looks away. He doesn't say anything, but that's disdainful. He doesn't say anything, but I don't know if just used to it. I just didn't pay attention to it, whatever it was. Anyway, went back to my squad, and later I overheard them talking about, that was such BS, and I overheard them talking about the way he had treated me. And I looked, I said, what are you talking about? And I said, the way he treated you, Sarge, that was just flat out BS. You're our sergeant, and then you shouldn't have to deal with that. And it hit me how they weren't looking at me as the female. I was their sergeant. I was their leader. And that felt really good. That's when I felt, okay, finally I made it. It's a profession where you do earn your respect. You do have to, but it's a great profession, and I'm grateful every day that I have it. Some things I was talking about earlier too, and everybody probably remembers Adam 12, and I remember watching it. And these episodes came about they started in 1968, I believe, and finished in 75, I think, the 7 years. There are a couple of them that stand out to me about how law enforcement, how officers have had to deal with things in all these years. And because no one really paid attention. It's, you know, you just clear the call and you move on to the next one. There's one, it's called It All Happened So Fast. And this was, it aired in 1968. And if you knew Reed Malloy, Reed was the probationary officer. And in that, he gets into a shooting. And one of the things in his description as he's trying to process this is he talks about he can't stop shaking. And that is not uncommon. What that is the ebb and flow of the adrenaline. There's such a surge of adrenaline, you know, from the trauma of having to shoot at somebody, that he now can't stop shaking. And it's known as, you know, sewing machine arm or sewing machine leg. You know, you just can't stop shaking. And the other is when the media approached him, because in his interview, he's talking about, I saw the muzzle flash, you know, he kept referring to that. And as they're going through this process with him, well, now here comes the media and they're taking pictures in, you know, 1968 with the big bulbs on the cameras, and they're going off. And you see his reaction to this, he's still processing this trauma. And, you know, it does take a while to, as you know, with a lot of traumas, they develop over time, but this is the immediacy of it. And often there's a lot of blanks in there because the brain is very protective of a trauma that you're facing. And you won't remember things until you do a walkthrough or go through it or talk it over with somebody. So that's not unusual. So you see how he's processing this, but it's really just, okay, let's get this over with and move on. And another one too, he's dealing with a child molest suspect for the first time. And he's a little rough. He's having a hard time dealing with this suspect that's in custody. And later on, he comments on, the child ends up dying. It's a 5-year-old boy that had been molested, and he overhears in the locker room, they're talking about, oh yeah, the child died on the table, and he punches a locker, and he just can't contain that emotion. And that's one of the things both his training officer, Malloy, and his sergeant counsel him on, about how you need to maintain your professionalism. You need to keep those emotions in. That's how we operate. You don't get to have thoughts and feelings. You have a process, you have a function. You have to hold it together. And he talks with Malloy later and just starts asking, he says, how do you do it? I mean, I don't know. How do you do this? And he says, you'll find a way. What he's talking about is compartmentalizing, how everything it ends up in a place somewhere in the brain and stays there. And until there's another issue with, you know, a triggering event of some sort. I'm thinking there was a time I was in the field with a squad, and it was a very sad call. We pretty much knew what we were going to be facing. There had been a boyfriend-girlfriend, a domestic violence dispute at another division, but this is where the girlfriend lived with their 6-month-old baby. And she was not forthcoming on where the baby was. And he kept asking, where's the baby, until they got into a physical fight about it. And she finally relented and just said, she's in the apartment. It had been probably 2 to 3 weeks at that point since anyone had seen the baby. So we knew what we were going to be facing when we opened that door. And sure enough, door open, well, right before, actually, I should take that back. Right before we had to kick the door open, one of the officers came to me, as a sergeant at the time, came to me and just immediately said, I can't go in there. I cannot do that. I just can't. So I was like, oh, okay, you know, I have an incident going on. I got to deal with you. And obviously if something is triggering you, and this is a lot of trauma for you. Other than the basic trauma, we know we have a dead baby in there. And so I said, okay, then you go wait over here and let me handle this scene. So we did get in, we found her. And then, you know, completed the investigation on that part, but I wanted to drive back with this officer. And I asked him, I said, what happened out there? What happened that you could not, you know, do your job, basically? And he said, well, 2 years ago, my wife and I had a baby that died within hours. And I never got to deal with that because I was so concerned with my wife. And I wanted to be there for her and help her get through this. that I never did deal with it, and I never got a chance to grieve it or process it. So, and this is 2 years. So 2 years he's been carrying this, and apparently functioning just fine. I had never seen or heard of anything until then, and that's when it all came up. You know, the triggering event to him was this absolute horrific scene that is for anybody, yet he had internalized it so much, and never having dealt with any of that, he's now dealing with it. So these are some of these things that do come up. So mental health in law enforcement, when I was with LAPD, we had the Behavioral Sciences Services section, and we had a peer support team as well. And I went through the training and became a peer support member, and ended up on the steering committee. So I was teaching in suicide and depression, and also relationships. So really love that. And now I have the opportunity here at Tustin, where I've continued with the peer support. But one of the things I work on is I'm not necessarily in the room when we do critical incident stress debriefings. I don't necessarily stay there. I set them up. I debrief later with whoever was conducting to see if there's some follow-up information. And there can be varied reasons. One, I'm thinking in one weekend, the same squad over and over, we had 4 suicides, 3 hangings and 1 gunshot to the head. And, you know, when the officers are describing, you know, having to cut down the 16-year-old girl and trying to save her life, and there's such a lack of control and being able to help, it's very traumatic. So we do these critical incident stress debriefings. And the CISD, as they're known, it's one part of the critical incident stress management system, which is the, you know, there's training, there's health, there's wellness. They're all different aspects to a CISM, but a critical incident stress debrief is a very particular function. And so we'll set those up, and those that are involved will participate. From the dispatcher that took the original call, to, you know, all the officers in between, to perhaps detectives that were handling, to, you know, the CSI, the crime scene investigator that took part in you know, doing the photographs. So actually, I just realized I left out a big piece here. My apologies. I was with LAPD for 21 years as a sworn, and I started here in Tustin as a civilian commander. In 2016, civilian commander, I'm in charge of the civilian side, the support services unit now. So that is dispatch, property and evidence, records, and CSI, police services officer. All the support services, whereas police officers would not be able to function, believe me, without our support services. So the dispatchers are kind of your first responders. They're the ones that take on the call when the person is, it's their worst day. It really is. People don't call the police because they're having a good day, believe me. They call because it's a bad day. So it's a continuation of this. And a lot of dispatchers will suffer from a vicarious traumatization because they don't get to hear the end of a call often. They get the initial call, they send the officers out, and then they're waiting, you know, that whole hold your breath, because you're not out there, you don't know what's happening. Officers, we feel a sense of control because we're actually doing something. We know what we have in front of us, and then we can complete the call. Dispatchers have a little more, don't have that ability. So those that are dispatchers, thank you. The first responders, we need you desperately. We need your calming voice. We need you helping and directing. And such multitaskers too, they're amazing. So down to records that files and property that takes the bloody evidence, and the CSI, crime scene investigators, who are doing the photographs and picking up the evidence and the DNA and whatever it is that's needed. So when we have the critical incident stress debriefing, we have everybody in there that played a part in this, like I said, from beginning to end. And the important question to start with, because we don't want to go with the feelings, because no one wants to talk about feelings. And that was key, like in '97 when I was there with the North Hollywood shooting, that was the thing that officers wanted is, you know, people wanted to ask, how do you feel? How do you feel? Well, how do you think I feel? have my partner's blood on me. I just went through this horrible traumatic event. They don't want to talk about how they felt because they're still trying to process that. When you do an incident debrief, then you start with, what was your role? So you ask, it's a thoughtful question. It gets them thinking and talking about the incident. And emotions are naturally going to come out of that as they talk about what they experienced. This is what I did. And they will naturally go into a feeling. But it's important to have everyone there, because then you hear what part they played in there, because you're missing some of those pieces of the puzzle, and it puts the entire picture together with a critical incident debrief. And so everyone hears, what was your role? So everyone knows they played an important part, and it helps bring some closure and a resolution to whatever that call was. So during that time too, there's education that can happen. These are things that you may be having nightmares in a couple of months, or a month, or you may experience some post-traumatic stress and injury of some sort. It's not a disorder unless it's over 30 days of some sort, but they may have some nausea, vomiting, nightmares, flashback. I mean, there are lots of symptoms that can come up, and so we try to catch this early. You want to do it generally within the week of the incident. We had one recently with the detectives had to respond, and well, it was the officers that first found this woman. The suspect described the absolute rage he went into. She was 77, homeless woman, and he wanted to steal her car and whatever money, so he beat her and attempted to rape her. And when he told the story, he was very cold and very calculating about it. And it really impacted the detectives when they did the interview. They had a difficult time absorbing the fact that this guy could talk about doing this to somebody, really victimize a person. So we did, that was a recent one, about a month or so ago, we did a critical incident debrief. So again, the start to finish, and then talking about, educating them through the process, providing information, follow up. And that's where I come in. I ask, does anyone need additional help? I can set them up with a mental health provider where they can maybe process a little deeper into their feelings. We encourage, talking with each other. And, the days of just clear and go back out there in the field and take care of your business. Yes, you still have to do that. But if you need a cup of coffee and you need a minute to decompress, absolutely. But, we're in this profession to help. We want to make a difference. That's what we do here. And so that's very, it's hard not to be there, and also for each other. So I wanted to make sure I covered some of this too. Yeah, the cumulative trauma that can come up. One of the things, the statement I have is, because you have to help others and fulfill your duties, you have to keep your emotional reactions in check. So when you're hearing, as as therapists, for those that are therapists, you don't react to pretty much anything that's happening. But you also know for yourself if this isn't something you can deal with, if you will be triggered by any sort of, like you said, we always want to be open to all clients and all people, but not necessarily. I remember a supervisor telling me about that in training, and just saying, if that's not something you can deal with, then, don't take that case, refer. It's okay to refer out. You may not be able to, you won't be helpful. And that's not how this works in this field. We have to come across all people, always be professional, and help regardless of what you're facing. So one of the things, like when COVID hit, obviously with the pandemic, so much about social distancing, and obviously we need to be safe, and how are we going to stay well and healthy? Obviously law enforcement was the essential workers, and the job had to continue. Crime did go down, but it's starting to spike again as people are starting to come out more. And we still have to, go in and save that choking baby. You still have to perform CPR for that individual that is suffering a heart attack. So social distancing might be fine for everybody, but there is still that need to help and to provide service and do the job. So that's what we always say. It's like, yeah, social distancing sounds so great, but not necessarily when you're a cop. Still have a job to do. I have to take that report. I have to help that person that calls me. We took all the protective measures that we could, like providing the personal protective equipment with the masks and the gloves and shields, and for having to print somebody, not bringing people into the station, having people meet outside in order to take a report, did more phone reports, trying to create as much distance as we could so as not to spread this disease, really trying to flatten that curve. And but it's hard, as a cop and trying to continue providing service. I mean, it's people business, and we still have to work with people, and even those in the homeless population, those that needed service. If we can place them, whether through mental health or through our temporary shelter, there are still the interactions that need to be done. So working on our side, had the opportunity to have a wellness program here at Tustin, not only for the police officers, but also for the city side. And so my function has been, I look at things for the future, how we're, something like haircuts, having someone masked and gloved and coming in, and we do health screenings here, our temperature's taken. We have nurses that are, that would come in getting their hours. They're actually intern nurses getting hours. They take our temperature, go through the health screenings, and did the same with any vendor that was coming in. Shopping hours, special shopping hours, because the hours are crazy and things weren't available. So, excuse me. When you're thinking about providing for your family, I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs is what it kind of crossed my mind. Well, those personal needs are taken care of, those safety, security needs, and your family's needs are taken care of, then you can build upon that. And so once those are taken care of, then we can function better and work on those other areas. So not only with peer support, but taking care of the personal needs, excuse me, the mental health providers, providing information, because obviously it's a stressful time, people coming home from here and having to change clothes and shower before they can even touch their loved one. Like all of you and all of us balancing, teaching at home and, working all night long as well. So any way that we could help. So one of the things, talking about cumulative trauma, self-care, something looking at here for, going outside, increasing your heart rate, connecting virtually, mindfulness and meditation, deep breathing exercises, taking an opportunity just to focus on what is and not what ifs, breathing, what's known as combat breathing. It's counting to four breaths in, holding for a 4 count, and letting go for a 4 count. I'm thinking back, when you're under stress of some sort. I was working the Academy Awards and at nearby at a hotel where the celebrities were actually getting into their limos and going to the Academy Award ceremonies. And I was going to do a presentation in a couple of days. Well, I was in uniform, and Liam Neeson came over, and I just wanted to say hello, and he was very friendly. Well, he was presenting that night. And I asked him, I said, how do you get up in front of all of these, billion people or whatever it is? How do you do it? How do you do that? And he says, well, I did some theater work. So, because I told him about the presentation, he said, I've done some theater work. So that's always helpful, where you learn how to project. And I said, well, that's great, except my presentation in a couple of days, I don't have time to work on the theater. And he says, well, then center your breathing. The breathing is very important to get into your core and to hold your breath and then let it out slowly, because you'll hyperventilate otherwise. So mindfulness in anything, any of your actions, and some meditation time, taking that 10 or 20 minutes just to relax and close out the world, it's important, for the self-care. And one of the things, shutting off social media, I mean, there's so much, we're hit with constant messages and so much negativity in so many ways. And we need to shut that down. We need to go outside, enjoy the beauty. You probably notice the sunset that I have behind me there. I took that photo because I enjoy those. That is my piece, where I just like to take some time and enjoy the sound of the ocean and just relax. And I always take photos right before the sun actually dips. And the reason for that is because when the sun actually sets, I want to be fully present and I don't want to be looking through a screen. So for me, that is my peaceful time, my relaxation, and just to listen to the sounds of the waves and just be absolutely present in that moment. And I think also so everyone finds their time, but what I think is also so important, by the end of the day, to give yourself compassion and say, I did the best I could today, whatever that might be. And I've a lot of times just kind of placed my hand over my heart and just close my eyes, and just the sound of the heartbeat can be very soothing, and just give yourself compassion. And that's a very critical and important part of your self-care. And also, coming out of this pandemic, I think some of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, who do we want to be? And through this situation, and even now with the world as it is, as with the different protests and everything going on, who do I want to become? Am I going to be bitter or better? And I don't mind addressing protests at this point either. I think they're extremely important. I welcome protests. I think it's important for people to have that ability to voice their concerns, voice their opinion, to be heard by others. And our job is not to take a political position. Our job is to ensure that First Amendment rights are protected. I have walked alongside many people during a protest, Janitors for Justice, like I said, during the Democratic National Convention. In fact, I think it's interesting because in that time, I remember one morning being responding out into downtown LA. And that morning, I sat down with a cup of coffee, another officer and myself, and there were two ladies, and we were sharing a table with them. And we asked them, we said, so what are you protesting today? Or we asked them, and they said, yeah, we're here for the protest. Oh, okay, well, what are you protesting today? And they said a couple of things, and one of them they said was police brutality. Okay, great. So we talked for a little bit. The point is we were having a conversation. We were able to have a conversation. Yes, basically, are you protesting me, this uniform, brutality itself, of course. But that is your right, and I will protect your right to do so. And by the time we finished coffee, and we just kind of waved and said, all right, well, see you out there. And it doesn't have to be negative and adversarial. I think that's what we're needing. There are a lot of people, very strong emotions. But on this side, as the police officer, it is my duty to protect that First Amendment right, and I am proud to do so. And I hope that conversation continues. I think that's what we're missing in here, is having that conversation so we have a better understanding of each other. So that's part of the resiliency part of this, what I'm seeing in the future, not only from the pandemic, but I think also just from the protests and the civil unrest, where we're going to go and be as people. Like I said, or who are we becoming? Who do we want to become? Are we going to be bitter? Are we going to be better? I'm thinking, are you going to be afraid to be outside in groups anymore? Are you going to feel comfortable going to a movie? These are questions you have to ask yourself, as we make changes. Visual cues are so important, and here we are, we're walking around with masks, and the faces are so hidden, and I'm noticing, missing out on the eye contact and the other. I mean, you can kind of tell someone's smiling, but we engage with each other. in smiling and having that contact, that interaction we've been losing so much of, and we've been doing it this way. And it's wonderful that we're able to stay connected virtually, but we miss so much in all the different visual cues. And so I think it's important when we get back to that, looking at yourself. Am I going to be afraid to be outside? Am I, where's my comfort level? How am I going to get my life back? And I think these are all very important keys, I think, for all of us as we adapt to this new way of doing things. And so I'm trying to think if there's something else here. Listen to each other too. What is it that other people need? And what is it that we're needing from each other? And how do we all work together and move forward into this new way? So I want to go ahead and be able to open up to questions if anyone has any. Oh, you're welcome. I am grateful to serve the community. Bravo, thank you. We all bring a unique experience, and there are various stakeholders. As I'm thinking now with the protest that's going to be starting their walk, they're going to walk through neighborhoods, we're going to be with them. And there are people that might be counter-protesting as well. It's important to protect their rights and their feelings as well. So I don't know everybody's experience, as you don't know mine, but I think what we all experience is the universal feelings of pain and fear, and we work on that together. I think it'll make us stronger as a community. So let's see, okay. Do you have a standard formal protocol for debriefing? Generally, it's ensuring everybody that had a part to play. There are some folks that said, all I did was transport that guy. I really didn't play a role in anything. One of the models that's come through is the Mitchell model. There's 8 different steps to take. But in the model that we were talking about with the 2, just focus on what is your role and then providing education throughout, seems to adopt all those different levels. It should be, I think, in any conversation, and as it should be organic, people have the opportunity to discuss what their role was and what their thoughts were, and they tend to naturally morph into their thoughts and feelings and where they were in that, and some real emotion starts to come out, especially when they start hearing other people. And often they help heal themselves in that, because if they're going through a lot of guilt and obviously trauma from the incident, and they will probably carry that with them always. There's such a lack of control of being unable to save a life, when that is your whole motivation and what you're trying to do, that it gives some closure to be able to talk about it and maybe, okay, it wasn't my fault that this person died, and maybe it's whatever they need to hear, all the puzzle pieces, in order to put the entire picture together to help them. So that's really the key. Like I said, setting it up, making sure there's food, water, snacks, appropriate seating, comfortable seating, having at least the one facilitator, perhaps an additional. In one case, we had a chaplain participate because there were so many questions about God and faith that came up in that chaplain was there. Generally, another 1 or 2 peer support members to provide additional feedback or follow-up, but also to be present. They generally don't engage in the conversation, but they're there to be available, and also to identify those that might need additional follow-up. And then from there, should someone need that, generally I know about that, and I can provide the mental health provider that can then work with them on a one-to-one basis if they need more therapy and more involvement. Okay, we're setting this up in the event. Okay, thank you. How does a degree in psychology help you in your job? I think a lot of it is having a better understanding of people. When people get frustrated, and that does happen in this job, it gives me an opportunity to sit back and just listen and help validate their feelings, if they're scared or frustrated or whatever it may be. And nothing shocks me. I think having been a therapist at one time, and same thing with this job, it's a combination, I think. I don't think I'm shocked by anything that happens. It helps so much with acceptance, understanding, being calm, bringing calm to chaos. We like to say that because there's so much, when you're in the midst of the chaos, if I can center myself, and that's the diffusing and a de-escalation of whatever is going on, and help people to focus. I'm thinking of one incident too. This was some years ago. This was when I was working South LA, and we'd had a gang homicide, actually. A gang member had stabbed another gang member to death. And when the family arrived, obviously the father is extremely distraught, and it's a natural reaction for people then to want to see their child. I mean, they demand because they don't believe it, and totally understandable. And I tend to give, regardless of the incident, grieving families tend to get very much a pass with me. So this gentleman, in his grief, obviously charged the line, and at that point, when I say a line, it's a line of police officers, because a lot of gang members started arriving and wanting to do something about, their buddy, and their friend and their family member, and understandable. So a lot of natural reactions for a police officer is to go to tactics and use something called a twist lock. We're just trying to gain control of him, but that tended to agitate the crowd. So I decided I'm just going to stay with him and engage in a conversation. And that meant, moving forward, having the man look at me. I said, "Sir, just look at me, sir, please, look at me," until he finally did, and just said, "Why did this happen?" I said, "I don't know, sir. I can't explain that. I don't know why, but you need to let the detectives do their job. I understand you're hurt." And he just kept asking why. He's obviously very distraught and very, and grieving in the situation. But it just took someone, I think, to just make him focus, make him look at me. I had him look at me and said, "Sir, let the detectives do their job. We want to know too who did this. We want to help you. This is our way." And he finally stopped, said, "Okay." And he turned around and walked away, which then completely de-escalated the incident. Because whatever you can do, and I try to do that, it's like, just listen to people, let them be angry. I've been called all kinds of things in the book, believe me. But that's certainly, they're right. I don't take it as a bad thing. I understand emotion, I think, maybe a little better. Let's see. Whoops, where did that go? A question just went away. Oh dear, okay. There it is. Get out of control. How do you ensure they're ready mentally for the next shift? Goodness. And that is part of the, let's see, I didn't catch the beginning. I said, how do you ensure they're ready mentally for the next shift? That's where just a general debrief. That is one thing where firefighters tend to be very lucky. They do live together, so they always have an opportunity to keep talking. One of the things we also tell families, because families want to know what's happening, and officers don't necessarily want to talk about it, but just give your partner that 30 minutes or so to come home and decompress. It's important that they have that opportunity when they get home. There's something, because of the high energy and high tension, often they come home and that mimics a depression, and then they look ready when they come back to work because they have to be charged up. So it's constant adrenaline flow. So trying to get them to stabilize. What are things that you enjoy doing? Making sure there's a balance. If they need some time off, if they need to spend time with family, encouraging vacations, encouraging, like I said, peer support. If someone, and I've seen this too, and you can look at faces and understand that maybe this is stressful for them. Just take some time and talk to them. Says, is there something you need to process on this? You need to talk about it. And they will. They're actually really good about talking with someone they trust, someone that they feel understands. Because the job isn't always pretty, and there are times that it is very horrific in what you see and what human beings are capable of doing to each other. So often that's going to stay in there. That's why, I'm always concerned about the triggering events, and you don't know when it's going to return at any time. So just ensuring we have peer support members that reach out anytime there might be somewhat of a traumatic incident, just to check in, and we do that with each other. It says, hey, can you just follow up? I read this in the log. I'm concerned about what happened, how that officer is processing. How do I decompress? Well, the sun sets, definitely. My dogs, I have to admit, my dogs are my most wonderful. There are times I ruminate, and maybe that's my type A personality, but I do try to let it go. Like, okay, that's done, and making sure I have a lot of water. I eat healthy food. Like I said, and ensuring sleep. I think sleep is very healing and restorative. Making sure I get it to bed at a decent time, and making sure I'm not drinking coffee late, anything, but walks too, walks with dogs. Okay, well, I'm getting the last. Rioting, looting, and destruction. How does law enforcement during these challenging times handle the dichotomy of poison and cool-headedness? Many thanks for your dedication and service. Well, thank you. I think the understanding that, yeah, it is stressful, and we're here to help people on both sides. I think this is probably the best way I can explain this. Yeah, you see all that going on, and it might be more stressful for you because I've been in these situations. I've been in riots. I've had things thrown at me. I've been hit with rocks and bottles in riot situations and skirmish lines and things. But I think what comes out is actually I have a bigger sense of control. It's hard to explain, I think, on that. But I feel like I'm doing something. When you're just watching it on TV and you just get all these, visual stimuli. I mean, there's so much stimuli going on, and you can't do anything about it. You're just sitting back and watching, and it's very passive, almost through a screen. And I think we're turning into that. We're just looking at screens all the time, and we're not really focused. What is this going on over here? Because you're looking through something, so there's a disconnect on that. Whereas when you are on the line, you have an opportunity to control it. You can see what's going on. You get all your senses. Yes, they're on overload, but at least all your senses are being activated, and you can actually help people in that. Someone that is being traumatized, you can get them out of there. When you're watching this and it's like, oh my God, help them, we have the opportunity to do that. And I think that's the only way to really look at it, is just realize I have a sense of control in the situation, which looks out of control, but I know what I'm doing. It comes in the training. This is so important on the training aspect of it, that I know what to do. I know what needs to happen next. And we always say flexible is too rigid. You need to be fluid, because you don't know how the situation, from second to second, you don't know. So you always have to be at the ready. So yes, there is a very heightened awareness. When officers test a lot of times on the MMPI, come out, hypervigilant and paranoia, but that tends to be life-saving. So there is it's odd, but it's life-saving, and that's how you function. I mean, we tend to be in that, code yellow, code red of some sort. More people need to be like that. Don't take things to heart when people say bad things to you. True. Especially with the uniform. Oftentimes it's the uniform they're angry at. It's not necessarily me as the person. I'm hoping, I think by having conversations and engaging with people, you see me in uniform, if you saw me on the street, you may not approach me, but that's okay. Have an opportunity to have the conversation. Especially when people are so criticized, but police are so criticized, but it's so essential to maintaining law and order, and what can be done to better equip and qualify upcoming police. Training, obviously, is very important. Let's see. Yes, we are criticized, but there is such a camaraderie. When you see what looks like it's stressful on the outside, the fact that we are all working together, we are shoulder to shoulder, race, gender, nothing matters in that situation. We're all blue, and that is how we view it. And our training is so important. We train and train and train. And training is a perishable skill, and it is something that we have to maintain on a regular basis. Physical fitness, mental wellness, making sure we provide support. Let's see, at all times. I'm better equipped and mentally healthy. We are teaching more about mental health in academies as well, and we do have mental health components at all times for officers. We do annual trainings and officers. Quarterly trainings on mental health and providing options. How do I manage my time for when I wrote my dissertation? Well, I did, and it's like 30 minutes a day, as long as you spend some time. But I did focus my vacations and my days off a lot of times on my dissertation because it's always nagging at you, But yeah, it is something you have to commit to. But again, it took me 14 years, but as long as you keep working at it, you will finish. And once you really become passionate about it, you'll find how easy it becomes. And yes, you can still respect others when you disagree. Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely right. I do agree with that so much. And what would you say is the biggest misunderstanding people have about the work you do? That we're violent. We're moms and dads, brothers, sisters, partners, coworkers, friends. We're human as well. We bleed, we die, we cry, we hurt. But we have to maintain control in order to maintain the public order. Love this profession. And I see we're running out of time here, and you probably want to get to Lamont. He was wonderful. I saw him last week. But if you wanted to talk more, I would love to. You can get me through the university. I'd be more than happy to engage with you further. If I haven't answered any questions or if there's anything I can do, I would really enjoy that. We are people. We love what we do. We really do come into it I don't know of any cop that hasn't come in that hasn't had a desire to help and make a difference in the community. And if they did not come in for that reason, they will not last long. Absolutely not. And they wouldn't even last long within an organization, because that isn't what we train and what we teach and what we want to be a part of in this community. So, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for participating, and all be safe, be healthy, be well, and take care of each other. We'll all be stronger together when we get through this. All right? Thank you. Also stay safe. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate thoughts and prayers. We absolutely do. And thank you. I appreciate it. And all the wonderful comments. You're all wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Stay safe.